I need you to do something for me for a second. I need you to visualize a grumpy man sitting in his house, okay? He doesn't leave his house much. He sits in his house and he scrolls Facebook, he scrolls Instagram, maybe he goes on YouTube, and he barks orders from his chair, okay? He thinks he knows everything about the world, but he actually hasn't left his house in, I don't know, maybe a year and a half, right? He just gets everything delivered, but he thinks his view of the world is perfect. Okay? Now, those of us outside of that home, we probably know that there's more to the world than what he sees, okay? Now, my point in saying this is how our gut microbiome becomes. It becomes limited, it becomes short-sighted, and it becomes just virtually, like, I don't want to say unchangeable, but it's set in its ways because it's limited. This is what happens if we do not eat a diverse amount of foods. Okay, I am guilty of demonizing foods sometimes. I certainly am. But as I've grown, I've matured, and I've become more diverse, I realize that, well, sometimes that's applicable, sometimes it's not. But we really have to look at our gut microbiome, and we have to look at the diversity of what we eat if we want to expand our thinking and expand a lot of other things. Make sure after this video you check out Thrive Market. Okay, speaking of diverse foods, Thrive Market does have a lot of options there. So they are an online membership-based grocery store. I use them for all kinds of different things, whether it's keto, whether it's fasting, paleo, vegan, whatever. You can sort by specific food types, eating types, dietary patterns, and it all gets delivered directly to your doorstep, and it's super reasonably priced. Okay, a lot of times you're going to find better prices at Thrive than you would at many grocery stores. They're a big supporter of this channel, but I highly, highly recommend you check them out. Seriously, like when I'm traveling, it's what I use almost exclusively. When I'm just at home and I'm getting food for my family, for my kiddos, for my toddler, I'm utilizing Thrive. So highly recommend it. There's a special link down below just for people that are watching this video, people that are subscribers of my channel. So use that link down below to check out Thrive Market. But now let me kind of continue this rant and then check out Thrive. Okay, so 75% of our food comes from literally 12 plant species and 5 animal species. That's it. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that we have more than 12 plants and 5 animals in this world. Now, we are limiting our diversity so much. And over the last 50 years, the amount of just diversity we have in our diets has just shrunk so much. We are going to run into problems with that. Now, I want to paint another picture for you for a second. And this is largely a little bit of a hypothesis, but it does also make sense. Okay, we're seeing a lot of evidence that a diverse microbiome from diverse foods allows us to be more, adaptive, and just we can hybridize, we can do different things because our microbiome is growing. And as this research is coming through, we're seeing more and more benefit to having a diverse microbiome. But there's a lot of different dietary patterns out there that become very, very restrictive. Okay, now if you go back in time, if you go take a look at a caveman, for instance, there might have been some diverse foods, but a lot of it was, pretty limited, right? We weren't able to get foods from different regions of the world. We didn't have that ability. A caveman that is in what is now Texas wasn't able to get food from what is now Australia, right? So we weren't able to get that diversity there. So what ends up happening? Well, maybe the human brain didn't start to develop more. We didn't start to develop more frontal lobe and more ability. This is all a hypothesis until we started bringing in foods from other areas. And suddenly we get industrial revolutions and we start expanding our knowledge base. And what's kind of funny is if you flash forward to today, you see that, wow, we are much higher IQ, but we also have a more diverse microbiome, okay? Now, there's going to be a tipping point as this decreases because, yes, we're starting to limit it again. We're processing and over-processing foods, right? So what's kind of interesting is, yeah, if you start limiting your diet so much, then maybe you are going to limit the scope of your mind too. You can't think outside the box. And you can't talk to that person. You can't talk to someone that is thinking small-minded because it just won't work. Have you ever tried having an argument with someone that just doesn't get it? It's like, I can't have an argument with you because you don't understand. You don't have the plethora of just experience to actually have a valid conversation or an argument with me. It's not a debate. This is just talking to a brick wall. And you can't change that. If someone's diet is changing so much, their microbiome is changing, that is their reality. So that doesn't change. And that's kind of the world that we live in a lot. When we're talking with people that don't make changes to their diets and don't progressively think and don't think about bioindividuality and don't think about experimentation, then they become, well, It just doesn't work, okay? So there's an interesting study that was published in the journal PNAS that kind of looked at this, not necessarily with the mind, but in the gut bacteria as far as metabolism is concerned. Okay, it took a look at subjects that were in rural Africa, in a specific village in Africa, compared to Europe. Okay, they found just ridiculous amount of difference between the African culture's gut microbiome and the European culture's microbiome. One could look at research and levels of morbidities and death and stuff like that. But the reality is that microbiome, like, that's pretty powerful. Now, there's going to be external factors like perhaps not as much medicine, not as much things like that. That's kind of a different thing. So you can't necessarily look at mortality rates. But microbiome was a huge difference. Now, the specific species that we look at, Bacteroidetes. Bacteroidetes is just tremendously associated. Correlation does not equal causation, I know, but with people that are lean. Firmicutes is largely correlated with people that are overweight and obese. Okay, there's definitely clear evidence there. So what's interesting is people that had a diverse microbiome because they were foraging and eating a lot of different things, just different vegetables, different nuts, different meats, all this, they had much higher levels of the lean bacteria, Bacteroidetes, and much lower levels of Firmicutes compared to in Europe, where things were a lot more processed and much less diversity. Quite the inverse, just the opposite, flat out. So more Firmicutes, more obesity, and less Bacteroidetes. Now, this is only looking at the metabolism factors. Okay, we have to look at the brain. We have to look, okay, we now know that between the gut and the brain, 80% of the nerve cells are afferent, meaning they are communicating from the gut to the brain. Only 20% communicate from the brain to the gut. So we used to think that, oh, like, I get nervous and I get sick to my stomach. Well, sure, there's a little bit of a connection, 20%, but the bigger connection is between the gut and the brain. And we don't feel what's happening in our gut per se, but we do feel what's happening in our brain. So it's like someone being just out of their mind, but not knowing they're out of their mind, because their gut microbiome is sending all these signals to poison their brain, basically, but that's their reality. Okay, so when we look at the big picture of shifting our gut microbiome and having more diverse microbiome, we're getting a better signal to the brain. 80% of those nerve cells are from the gut to the brain, okay, in the vagus nerve. 20% from the brain to the gut. It starts here. Now, I had to do this rant because I'm tired of closed-mindedness. I'm tired of this. Like, we have to be the ones that experiment. We have to be the ones that pave the way for ourselves. We have to vote with our dollars on the kinds of foods that we eat. We have to stop being a bunch of wimpy people that just, are talked into corners because of bullies and things like that. No, we make decisions for ourselves. And trust me, we will rise to the top as a result. That's my rant. I'll see you tomorrow.